Hi, I'm Howard Bragman. Thanks for joining us today on this episode of Gwissues. Today we have two experts, Dr. Loren Olson, a psychotherapist, and John Sylla, who's director of the American Institute of Bisexuality. And we're talking about the state of bisexuality in America. And one of the things that I always don't understand about our community, we always say LGBT. We mean G, we sometimes mean L, we mean T if it's Chaz Bono, but we rarely get concerned with the bisexual or the B part of our moniker. John, is that part of your mission to make sure that we're not left on the cutting room floor when we're talking about bisexuality?
Well, absolutely. In fact, some studies say that more than half of LGBT people are actually in the B category, and those are only the ones who are identifying as such. Depending on how we might define bisexuality, there's a huge component of people who may, say, not identify as bisexual, but they may feel bisexual attraction, or they may behave bisexually. So yes, we think that there needs to be a lot more discussion and information about this.
Dr. Olson, what does it mean to be bisexual? If you're a gay guy and you're at a bar and this couple picks you up and you mess around with the really interested in the guy but mess around with the woman too, are you bisexual? Does it mean that it's a regular active part of your life? How are we defining it these days?
Well, I think it's very difficult to define, and that's part of the problem. And it also, because it can change from individual to individual, as well as within the individual themselves. I called myself bisexual at one time, but it was during a time when I was struggling with my sexuality and trying to figure out what I was. So I think it depends on whether you're talking about attraction, fantasy, behavior, or identity. And in my mind, it all comes down to self-definition, how you define yourself based on who you believe you are.
What do you think, how does the media treat bisexuality? Do they generally ignore it for the most part?
Okay. I think that that's generally the case, that it's talked about in some ways, but we don't hear much about it. Usually we refer or think of it, both lesbians and gays, in very stereotypical ways, and I don't know that there is particular stereotypical belief about what bisexuality is. I don't know, maybe your other guests would disagree with that, but in my mind that it doesn't seem to exist in the same way.
Well, I guess I do respectfully disagree. We have looked at different definitions, including physiological responses, whether eye pupil dilation when you show people photos, or genital response, or even how much time people look at pictures of people in swimsuits. And there very definitely are physiological, measurable signs of bisexuality. It's certainly the case that for some people it's a transitional orientation, but the science says that for many people it's an enduring orientation.
Well, I believe that that's the case. I wouldn't disagree with what you're saying or your comments in regard to what my comment was, because I think it has a lot to do with what we are drawn to, and you know, what makes sense to me is Kinsey's old description that there are people who are exclusively homosexual and exclusively heterosexual, and that the majority of us fall in the middle between that. Well, if that's bisexuality, then it's a very, very diverse community of people.
Absolutely, and I'd add to that Kinsey made a scale from 0 to 6, which is like saying if you put Chinese food at one end and Italian food at the other end, that the more you like Italian, that means the less you like Chinese. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can like both Italian and Chinese. You can like both chocolate and vanilla. You can like both men and women.
Are there people, let me ask you guys, are there people who just, I would call them trisexual, or just horny in any port in the storm? Does that make you bisexual if you're just a horn dog?
In terms of behavior, I guess it does.
You know, I think, again, my own thoughts about it is I don't think those people would define themselves necessarily as bisexual. In my mind, it has to do more with your psychological self-identity in that case. And there certainly are pleasure seekers. And I think it may be a generational issue too. I think that and I don't have any statistics to back me up, but it's my sense that probably the younger generation is more comfortable with labeling themselves as bisexual in that regard. In my own work, my work has been mostly with older men, and many of them are married. And for them, a lot of them, the label gay is so toxic that labeling themselves as bisexual is a little more comfortable place to be for a while. And they may be having sex exclusively with men, but somehow being defined as gay is just too threatening for them.
Well, in the old days, before people came out, they would call themselves, they would say, I'm bisexual. I think Elton John said he was bisexual. David Geffen said he was bisexual. And a lot of people in the gay community are cynical about the term bisexual. They're just like, oh, they haven't come all the way out yet, and they're just trying to couch it.
Sure.
That's the fallacy of generalizing from your own experience to say that everybody else would be on the same experience trajectory that I am.
Well, the research I'm seeing is young people are much more fluid in their sexuality. They've had the panoply of sexual experiences available to them in the media and online, and they're just not as judgmental, and they go where the getting's good to a certain extent.
Yeah, I think that's maybe true, although in certain populations it's still very, very difficult to express anything but traditional heterosexual choice.
Well, I think that's true. I think the gay community is really one of the toughest. Do you find the gay community or the straight community is more accepting of the term and the understanding of bisexuality?
Well, early on, shortly after the Stonewall, there was a lot of confrontation about the issue of bisexuality, and people were just labeled as lacking in courage and not enough courage to come out all the way, and hiding in bisexuality. I don't know that I hear that so much anymore. My own experience is more with older men who are struggling with it. But most of them move more in the direction of exclusive relationships with men. There's a book by Lisa Diamond that talks about sexual fluidity, and she writes that she believes that it's this kind of fluid expression of sexuality is truer for women than for men. But I think all of us in certain circumstances could experience alternative sexual partner choice. If we look at things like men who are isolated in prison or in the old days on Navy ships, many of them would experience bisexual relationships during those times and then return to heterosexual lives after they were able to do so. So it is a somewhat fluid concept, I think, for many people.
Is bisexuality self-limiting? I mean, if you're a 20-year-old guy who's single and bisexual, active sexually with people of both sexes, you eventually are likely going to settle down in some sort of relationship, as probably a majority of people do, unless you have some open relationship. Doesn't that either make you straight or gay, depending on who you settle with?
I don't think it necessarily makes you straight or gay, but it does limit your choices of how you're going to behave unless the rules in your relationship allow for a more polyamorous kind of expression of it. But I mean, if you're going to have a committed one-person monogamous relationship, then you're going to have to separate out of the part of yourself that expresses a choice toward the other sex.
On that, we're going to end it, gentlemen. was a great discussion, a stimulating discussion, and you know, I'm one of those gays who believes there are people who are bisexual. I've seen every continuum on the scale of sexuality, and I think love and I'm very love and sex positive as long as you practice it safely. And I thank you for sharing your joy and your wisdom today, and thank you for joining us today on Gwissues. Remember, you can subscribe to Gwist TV and Gwissues. You can watch some of our past episodes, and thanks for being with us.